Wednesday in Simpsonville, South Carolina. It is a gorgeous day out. It's in the very high 60s, bright and sunny. Spring has sprung, and everything is starting to green up, and all the leaves are back on the trees, and blossoms are everywhere. Romans 13. The first part of Romans in chapter 13 is difficult. Let me read it to you. Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinances of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For the rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you not want to have fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it is a minister of God as an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of the wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Render to all what is due to them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom is, and fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. On first reading, in out of context state, it would seem that no matter how tyrannical, no matter how bad a government is, no matter how bad an authority is, that we as Christians are to do nothing. That's not exactly what this is saying. Nor should we ever take Scripture out of context of the entire Scripture. There's no question that when someone is elected to office or someone is allowed to rule, God has allowed it. Maybe not willed it, but He's allowed it. We know that during the early days, the Scriptures reveal to us that many tyrannical governments were allowed to overrun the nation of Israel. In those cases, many times it was for judgment of the nation of Israel for not having stayed close to God. So we see very often that tyrants are allowed to be in office for a purpose, not perhaps for God's perfect will for mankind, but for a reason. Now, so where do we draw the line? At what point do we stand up against abortion, homosexuality, unethical behaviors, corruption? All of these things we know by the Scriptures are wrong. So do we sit back and just allow God to judge these things? Do we stand up and speak out against them? Do we cry for justice? It's very, very necessary to read this passage of Scripture as it was intended. That is, that when we fear God, we should also fear authority. Authority that is correct, not corrupt. Authority which is looking for good and evil, not for that government which is evil. So there's no question that this passage of Scripture is meant to be taken into the concept of good government, except as we know many times God allows us to suffer the consequences of our own actions, just as He allowed the nation of Israel to suffer the consequences of our own actions. Therefore, it's very important. When we stand as Christians, we need to take a look to see if what we're opposing is something that is preferential for us, something that we just don't like, or whether it's ungodly, whether it's against God's overrules. That is, when government makes rules that are contrary to God's rules, it's time for Christians to speak out, not to make two wrongs a right, not to go into a conduct that would be unbecoming of a Christian and against Scripture also, but to speak out, to work through the system of judicial, work through the system of voting, to bring about right rule and to bring about correct actions by government. It's a delicate balance, isn't it? We don't like a lot of the things that government does. But if we don't vote, and if we don't speak out, and if we don't run for office ourselves, then we have nobody to blame but ourselves. It's a difficult subject. And it's important for us to take a look and see if what we oppose is because it is ungodly or whether it's just something we don't like. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a good day.